So far this week, we've talked about a number of different features of tragedy. Like comedy, tragedy is a classical genre, elements of which Shakespeare inherited but also experimented with. For the ancient Greeks, tragedy had a variety of formal elements. We talked about hamartia, an error of judgment on the part of the main character, peripeteia, the turning point in which the protagonist's fortunes turn from good to bad, and anagnoresis, the moment in which the protagonist recognises their earlier hamartia. We've also talked about the fact that Shakespeare often breaks the rules in different ways. Othello isn't a classical Greek tragedy, it's an early modern one. And Shakespeare doesn't follow all the rules of classical tragedy. That's one of the reasons that Shakespeare and Othello is so important. But one thing we haven't talked about so far in this section is the emotional effect that a tragedy often has on its audience. Remember in the Hamlet section, Adriana's story about the importance that Hamlet had for her as a young woman in the midst of war. People often react strongly to tragedies. In particular, they react strongly to the endings of tragedies. The unwinding of fate, where a character makes an error of judgment and then the fortunes of their life gradually fall apart, can be unbearable to witness, even in a theatre. In Othello, Desdemona's death is often unbearable to watch. But this is a little paradoxical. Like Adriana, people also experience positive emotions when they watch and read tragedies. They're unbearable and they can evoke seemingly unbearable emotions in us, and yet they can also be incredibly hopeful and vital. In this section, we're going to talk about this feature of tragedy in Othello, the emotional outpouring it evokes in us. This is called catharsis.